Thank you so much for doing this for FERNTV. I guess, this is a big subject. How did you first, break it down of who do you want it to concentrate on and narrow it down, so to speak, for the
Mm.
film?
That was an evolving process for sure. That took many iterations. When I started that film by myself back in 2023, and initially I thought it was going to follow a few people who wanted to break up with their phones. I had been through a process like that, and I talked to a lot of people about it. People were inspired by what I'd done, and I thought, okay, it's really helpful to actually put that on a big screen, to lead by example, so to speak. And I very quickly realized that individual choices are one piece of the puzzle, but the issue is so much bigger than that. We're talking about our well-being, mental health, our agency. We're talking about data privacy, and a lot of these things require collective solutions. Individual choices are really only going to get us so far. And once I met Kristen Bright, I decided, okay, we're going to shift what this film is doing, and then that was a process that continued once Jack came on board to edit it.
Yeah, you know, Sarah had this powerful story already going with Kristen by the time I came in. We knew we wanted to get Gen Z in there.
Hmm.
We wanted, because it's so critical that they're part of this conversation, that their voice is represented and how we're going to solve our tech problems. Um, and so we were looking for inspiring Gen Z sort of leaders who were doing things differently.
Hmm.
And we landed upon Trisha Prabhu and the Offline Club, the three guys from the Netherlands. We had also, engaged with probably 5 to 10 other people at that time, but those were the two threads that really stuck. Those people really seemed to be, we really wanted to cover regulation, design, and culture as kind of like the three main areas that we have power to push back against this problem. So that's why we landed with those stories.
And then Brockton High came in kind of at the last second. I think I saw a clip of Principal McCaskill on the news, and I realized they're only an hour away from where we were based in Boston. And
Hmm.
I just was like, we need them in the film.
Right. Question for you, the editor, of course. There must have been a lot of footage that you couldn't use or could use. That must have been like a grueling process, but take us a little bit of toward and briefly describe that journey.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, about 95% of the film is on the cutting room floor. I would say that is probably typical of most documentaries and films. Um, it's an emotional process, right? Because uh, we needed to fit so much into this movie. The thing about having an information documentary that also gets into individual stories and does this cinema verite, kind of like gets us attached to characters, is that we really didn't have the luxury of like going too deep into any one storyline. Kristen's, we
Right.
obviously went the deepest. But if we went too deep into one of them, we would probably lose track of the larger whole of what we were trying to say. So I think the really hard part was, we had formed these relationships with Trisha, with Rethink and Offline Club. We had all these scenes that we wanted to include, but as we were trying to sort of like narrow the documentary down and refine it, we were really having to keep track of, really honestly, like, where is it losing its steam? Where is the film losing its focus? So as we would review those rough cuts, we would sort of take our notes and then be like, yeah, we're going to have to experiment with pulling that scene out or shrinking that scene down. So there was a lot of that. The other thing I like to say is that, Sarah made this a particularly fun challenge for me because I thought, this will be great because we can just have a narrator, and wherever we have like a gap between A and B, we'll just have them explain the gap. And then she was like, no narrator. So you're gonna have to figure out how to make all those gaps feel natural and have every time
Amazing.
we
Yeah.
jump from one to the next, just make it feel normal for the viewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted to put the viewer in a place where they have to synthesize some of that information themselves and be a bit more of an active viewer, right? I'm European. I think there's a lot in European cinema that does that, even in like, narrative cinema. And so I'm all about that. And I think especially these days where we have so much content telling us what to think all the time, I wanted to put our viewers in a place where they have to think for themselves. So pushing back against the narration kind of came from that conviction. But of course, it did make Jack's life like so much harder.
Thank you for the challenge, though.
Um, I know there's a lot of statistics that you probably were shocked about when you were doing this film. I guess for both of you, what was the most shocking discovery in regards to, cyberbullying and the use of social media?
Mm.
For me, it's not a stat and it's not even about cyberbullying, but I hope it's okay that I tell you about this one because it really, really struck with me. So when we were starting to talk to teachers, one thing we kept hearing was that because of phones in schools, kids oftentimes don't even know the name of the kid that's been sitting next to them all semester. And that to me was
Wow.
unimaginable.
Wow.
Unimaginable. I mean, when I think about my school time, it's about all these kids. I still know all their names, You
Yeah,
show me an
yeah.
old school picture from like first grade, I can still recognize them all.
Right,
That's
right,
what it was about. And imagining that being taken away, I think we don't need stats to explain why we have a loneliness epidemic when we hear that.
right.
Yeah, we've kind of given each kid the ability I mean, middle school is an awkward time, right? It's a time that a lot of us might wish we had this suit of armor on where we didn't have to sort of have conversations with that person you have a crush on or those kids that made fun of you or whatever. But a lot of the sort of growing as we go through that socialization experience, I think we become stronger, people that are able to be resilient when we're older. So a lot of what we were observing with this tech is that it's giving kids the ability to kind of put themselves in a bubble,
Mhm.
not necessarily because it's what they want in the long run, but just because it's easier in that awkward period, right? And so once the kids, what they said at Brockton was like, at first I was freaked out when they took away my phone because now I have to talk to the person next to me and I have to,
Yeah,
get through that awkwardness.
yeah.
But a year later, they're like, I have so many more friends. I totally get it now. Like this was worth it. So I think, yeah, that was probably the insight that struck us the most.
And the tone of your film, I mean, it's very informative, yet it's very hopeful in a sense, in a such a, doomsday sort of subject.
Mm.
But you managed to put out a tone of hopefulness and almost solution driven documentary.
Yeah, that was definitely important. I mean, the Social Dilemma was such an amazing movie, and we have Tristan Harris from that in our movie. But I think that movie, in a lot of ways, it let people know of the problem. So they're like, "Oh my God, can you believe this is sort of how big tech is designed, and these are the incentives." But then didn't really give them a what next, right? So a lot of people, I think what we knew is that like the awareness has spread far and wide. Almost everyone now would agree, like, yeah, I get it. Phones are toxic. Like we think we all know this stuff is like taking us away and kind of like conditioning us to leave the moment at any given time. Um, but we wanted to also focus on what can we do about it?
Mhm.
How do we inspire people that there is a movement underway?
Right.
And it's not just beginning. It's actually, there's a lot of things already deep in motion. People are successfully pushing back against this. And really, if we can grow that awareness and get people to be inspired by it, then we can reach that critical mass that can really have that power to force big tech to change how they design things.
Yeah, and I know. I think we are in an ironic situation where, as a documentary, it's easier to get people's attention if you scare them. But that doesn't mean people then are going to act necessarily. I don't
Right.
think we act because we're scared. I think we act because we can see how it can be different. We might
Mhm.
be angry about the situation, but people need to feel empowered in some way in order to want to act. And we just felt it was so important to show, as Jack said, this is already underway. There are a lot of amazing, smart people working on this, and you don't have to do this alone. I think that's very
Mhm.
important. A lot of the advice around social media habits tends to be very individualized, and doing this together with other people makes it so much more easy, so much more fun. And a lot more impactful. And literally the reason that, so many schools around the US now are phone free is because of people getting together and becoming active on a local level within their school community, parents and teachers and principals driving this change. So we can do a lot. And it was really important to us to show that and invite people into that movement.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Can you briefly describe the trust between, of course, the two of you and with Kristen, and how did she feel about this film after its production and it's done, right? So,
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. It's such an important one. When I first got connected with her, I honestly didn't think she was going to say yes because she had said no to a lot of people. And then when she was open to it, came at a bit of a surprise. And I remember thinking, my gosh, I hope I'm ready for this. I'm taking on a lot of responsibility here. She's lived through the worst thing that you could live through, losing a child. And how do I do this? How do we do this so it doesn't become a re-traumatizing process? And the most important thing to me was to let her know that she has a seat at the table, that she's part of this process, that she was going to see rough cuts, that I was going to explain to her what we're going to do and why we're going to do that, and she will have the opportunity to weigh in. And then making choices about not leaning into the trauma in a crass way. That was really,
mhm,
really important. So the fact that we brought on Cola Animation to do our beautiful animations and show some of the darkest moments that way
right.
was an important choice. And then, of course, empowering Kristen, but all our participants really, to tell us when cameras needed to stop rolling and making sure that they knew they could always say that. I think a lot of documentaries, that's precisely the moment where they want to keep rolling.
Right.
When things get really intimate and really vulnerable. And I think that's only okay if your participant wants that and allows that and thinks that is ultimately helpful and empowering.
Mhm,
Otherwise, it is traumatizing for them, and I would argue oftentimes also traumatizing for the audience.
mhm,
And we certainly wanted to stay away from that.
mhm.
Yeah, and the first time, we watched this film with a lot of the survivor parents in the audience, not just Kristen, but, the 10, 15 or so other moms and dads that have been fighting alongside her. Um, I was sweating bullets that viewing because I
Yeah.
was like, I just hope to God that, you guys kind of have a hint of how we've tried to pull this off, but you've never seen it.
Kristen
I
had, but
She
the other
she had,
parents,
that's true.
Kristen had seen it many times.
She had, but the other parents had not seen it, and I just, really wanted to make sure that they felt we handled this topic with sensitivity and with sort of reverence in a sense, right? Like this is not something that we should be exploitative about or be crass about. This is, your deepest trauma and the story of life and of humans and the relationship from parent to child so sacred. So I was very happy after the viewing. A lot of them came up and just said like, we really appreciate the sort of care that you took with this topic. We feel that our stories have been told in a way that feels sensitive, but also helps us feel empowered. And so that was super important.
And last question, of course, how does it feel, you mean, for your film to be selected at South by Southwest? I guess it's a big testimonial to, your hard work and all the blood, sweat, and tears, of course.
Yeah, it's definitely still a little bit surreal. It's been a whirlwind being over here. South by is, of course, there's a lot going on. I think for us, it's so great to be in a place where technology, storytelling, culture all converge because we are at the intersection of all that. And so we've been able to have people come to our screenings that are in the tech track of the festival, and really have these two worlds mingle, which I think is such a rare opportunity. I
Absolutely. I mean, I think, I would say the general sentiment of this festival is a little more pro-tech, which
Yeah.
again, we are not anti-tech, we are pro-human. But
Yeah.
There are a lot of pro AI, panels going on over
Yeah.
here that don't really question the underlying business model or incentives that are happening right now.
right.
So those are interesting moments for us to find
But
ourselves
Yeah.
in.
but I really appreciate that this festival is, is really open-minded enough and interested enough in a complex conversation to bring all these people that are really excited about what tech is going to bring, and then also bring us to say, like, we should really look at this and make sure we're doing this the right way. To bring all that into the same festival, I think just speaks to the fact that they're very interested in a complex conversation, and I think that's the best way for us to move forward. Really like trying to balance the good and the bad as best that we can.
Yeah, and I think some of the examples that we've also been exposed to of the good AI actually can do are pretty compelling. Like you spoke to a gentleman whose wife was able to speak again because of AI.
Right, had ALS, and AI gave her a voice to speak to her husband. There's so many amazing things this technology, I think, is already doing, of course, and will continue to do. And I think, if we can really help people clearly see the distinction between the good that it can do for us and where it's trying to sort of essentially exploit us or
replace humans
and change who we are. I think we're on team human. We believe the human being is a beautiful thing and worth fighting for.
Well, I just want to say congratulations on the film, and I've covered many documentary films before, and I can already see that it's a lot of work and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and especially into this film. And I want to congratulate you on being here at South by Southwest, and of course, surviving the chaos this weekend. And congratulations once again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Fernando.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.